Hedge highlighting is a very important painting technique because it allows us to define and make our models readable by separating all the different parts. But like any other good thing in life, it doesn't come without issues. So in this video, I'm gonna show you what causes these issues, how to fix them, and also give you some drills to help you practice and improve. And stay until the end because I have big giveaway announcement. After more than 20 years in a hobby and 5 of those just teaching people how to paint, I can tell you for certain there are 4 main issues with hedge highlighting. Issue number 1, your hedge highlighting looks inconsistent and messy. This happened for many reasons, mostly because of shakiness, bad posture, wrong brush angles, and sudden changes in pressures while you're painting the line. Issue number 2, when paint doesn't come off the brush. That's because of course, consistency. Or to be more precise, you don't have enough liquid paint/water on your brush for the paint to flow off the bristle without effort. This causes the paint to dry mid-stroke and your line breaks and nothing comes out, and also the brush you use plays a part. More on that later. Issue number 3. Everything looks over-highlighted and way too busy. Trying to add detail and complexity to our model, we sometimes achieve the opposite. This happens a lot when painting more layers of hedge highlights. If your lines are not thin enough, the 2 layers are gonna overlap with just a second lighter layer showing through, creating that effect. And last, but clearly not least, number 4, it takes forever. All these issues all together create a lot of roadblocks ahead of you. And this roadblock makes you feel like hedge highlighting is a super slow process. But perception is not reality because you're making all these mistakes, and that is what makes hedge highlighting slow. There's a way to hedge highlight better, faster, and with less struggle. You just need to fix the following things. The first thing we need to fix is gonna allow us to make the paint flow off the brush easily. And here's how you achieve it. You fix these 2 elements. The first element, not talked about enough, is choosing the right brush. And like I mentioned previously, I don't just mean brush with a sharp point. The belly of the brush is very important because it will determine how much paint is stored in the bristles. If more paint is stored in the belly of the brush, the paint will take longer to dry out. So try to use a brush with a sharp tip but also a longer/bigger belly. This will allow you to avoid that annoying thing where the paint doesn't come off the brush. The second element is, of course, finding the right consistency. The paint can be too thin because you will have no control over it, but it cannot also be too thick. But I have to admit that with today's painting technology, it's really hard to have super thick paint that doesn't flow off the brush, even adding no water at all. As you can see, most of the times paint flows by itself. But of course, to be safe, we can add a bit of water, just a very tiny amount. Here, finding the perfect consistency, it's all about how the paint feels on the brush. If you feel a little bit of resistance, it's too thick. If it flows smoothly, that's a sweet spot. Let me show you some drills. And let's practice together, kids. Drill number 1. Here the goal is to test 3 different types of consistency to figure out the sweet spot you need to use for hedge highlighting. Starting with a thin consistency, the goal here is to train your senses and learn how the different consistency feel. Here on a plasticker strips, you're not gonna see the paint run and be totally uncontrollable, but the issue with this thin consistency is more on the kind of mark it makes. The paint won't cover enough and it will create that annoying wet pigment deposit at the end of the brush stroke. For thick consistencies, there's a big difference when I have a too small brush versus the proper brush, but also, again, the paint technology is pretty advanced and even straight out of pot, the paint feels fine and there's no big resistance. The problem with thicker paint presents itself when you're using rehydrated old paint from the wet palette. And you can tell this by the resistance that the brushes makes in the strokes. From these, you can find out the sweet spot. Most paints are this smooth with no water added, but of course you can add it just a bit. If you're using Pro Acryl, you probably won't need even that. Let me remind you that all these topics are tackled way more deeply in my course, The Foundation System, where you can learn to properly control your brush and consistency for both lines and blending. So if you really want to improve and stop struggling with painting and blending, click the link in the description. Improve at painting, a support channel, and double win. Drill number 2. Here is all about testing if you have the right consistency and if your brush is loaded properly. I'm gonna load the brush once and start drawing shapes on the plastic art squares. Here the difference is very palpable between the smaller brush and the bigger one. The smaller brush won't even do the back of the plastic art. It just runs out of paint. In the back where I painted the circles, you see I started losing a little bit of that opacity, but still I could keep going. Of course, on an actual mini, you don't have to do this. This is just an exercise to test the brush loading and the consistency, and it's gonna be really helpful. But fixing the consistency is not quite enough to have smooth edge highlights. Before we move on, I have something really special for you. It's my pleasure to announce that I partnered with the Army Painter to bring you a huge giveaway of 3 Fanatic Most Wanted painting sets. To sign up, click the first link in the description and you'll find all the information. For my amazing Patreon supporters, you guys will double X or 5x your chances of winning because I love you. The winners are going to be announced December 22nd. Don't miss out. Let's move on with the video. Second thing you'll need to fix. It's gonna allow us to paint lines of the same thickness. Have consistency in your lines. Please just remember you don't need to paint super duper thin edge highlights for edge highlights to be good. You just need to stay consistent and execute 1/2 thicknesses. It's not a must to have a second layer of edge highlights overlapping the first one, because you can just apply the second layer with the same thickness but just on some of the spots where light is gonna hit the most. Okay, but how do you do all that? Find a comfortable position where your arms and hands can rest comfortably on the desk. And secondly, you need to control how much you press down with your brush with the bristles on the surface. Again, let me show you some drills. Drill number 3. Here I'm gonna test 3 different pressure: 2 millimeters, 1.5 millimeters, and 1 millimeters. Painting lines of the same thickness on different squares. I use my mat to create kind of a template in order to actually see the thickness of the lines, something I could check back with. The goal here is to observe the behavior of the bristle of the brush and how it changes with the different pressure. You will notice that for the first 2 thicknesses, the bristles will bend a lot because you'll need to press down pretty hard in order for the bristle to distribute the paint in a way that they can create that kind of thickness. I'd say 2 millimeters is way too thick for edge highlighting, and after taking a measurement, I'd say 1 millimeter is pretty doable. It's not super thin. You can do it, Jack. I believe in you. Drill number 4. And last but not least, here the goal is to execute the same pressure. It might seem the same as the last drill, but it's not, because here the focus shifts from observing how the brush behaves to focusing on keeping the same pressure, which you're gonna need stability for. I'm painting both long and short lines. Longer lines are pretty hard to paint, and for this reason are a very good exercise. On a model, you'll pretty much never have lines so long unless you're painting like a tank or something like that. I'm also gonna do the same thing, but resting my brush on the edge of the plastic card. This is very important to train because here is not just a matter of maintaining the same pressure, but also keeping the brush at the same angle, because the angle is gonna give you the different thicknesses. That's gonna be plenty useful, and you will actually speed up things once you practice and you do it on a model. If you do this, I bet you can 10x your edge highlighting skills and paint more readable and defined models. But there's still one thing missing from this. Another truth that I wish I heard before. Edge highlighting is just the top of the iceberg when it comes to highlighting. Painting realistic meanings requires much more than just highlighting the edges. You need to highlight the whole volume of the model. And here's the same question that I asked myself for years. Where do I place them? Luckily for you, I have a video here where I go over a simple painting system that's gonna help you understand how to distribute the gradients across your miniature. And you'll see me there. You see past me. Yeah, it was